Miss Robinson, who walked, or more accurately sailed into the reception area a few minutes later, was a petite black woman with long bronze hair, somewhere between 35 and 45. She was dressed in a snug white pantsuit, with a blouse of metallic brown flashing a professionally admissible amount of cleavage, and copper-toned jewelry smoldering at her neck and ears. All in all, an ensemble it required more than average aplomb to carry off. She extended an acrylic-nailed hand and introduced herself in a smooth, self-assured voice as LaDonna. As civilities were being exchanged, LaDonna led Charmaine down a publicity poster-lined labyrinth to her office. She closed the door and indicated a seat. Please. Charmaine, waiting to sit until LaDonna was installed in her throne-like leather chair, observed, You have a great view. LaDonna looked casually out of it. Yeah, I'm one of the lucky few with a window. When there's no work, I can always watch traffic on Laurel Canyon. It sounded like an innocuous remark. The tone was neutral, even verging on friendly, but something told Charmaine it had been a mistake to mention the view, or to mention it before LaDonna had asked a single question apart from the customary, how are you and how was traffic? And the clause, when there's no work, seemed to hold notes of portent. Charmaine wrapped one tense ankle around the other and retucked the curl. LaDonna was thumbing through the papers in an open folder on her desk, her countenance inscrutable as the award statues lining her shelves. At length she looked up. I've discussed your interview with Julie and Ben. The statement was redundant. Of course she would have spoken to Julie and Ben, but the fact that she alluded to it, and at the outset of her own interview, caused a panicky uh-oh to slam into Charmaine's chest like a fly stuck on the wrong side of a window, which, in the case of LaDonna's window, was definitely the inside. And I've gone through your resume. Your first job was with an airline? Yes, that's right. Other than what you said about drunk passengers, God, that must have been awful. Was there any aspect of the job you didn't like? The discomfort level rose a couple of notches as the mercury was rising in thermometers across Los Angeles. When the incident with an intoxicated passenger had been mentioned to Julie and Ben, it had been done in response to a standard interview question. Could you describe a time you faced a challenge at a previous job and how you handled it? That question can make or mar an applicant's fate depending on how it is answered. And Charmaine's succinct reply, not disclosing how often she'd faced that challenge or on which route, revealed her sang-froid, her ability to keep her cool in a crisis, while also highlighting her problem-solving skills. It clinched a point in her favor with both Julie and Ben. LaDonna's question, by contrast, was negative however you tackled it. But Charmaine knew she couldn't sit there and say nothing. To be honest, I didn't like waking up jet-lagged in a hotel bed. That would be an occupational hazard, right? A less secure person would have gloated over the repartee, perhaps with a smug smirk, or an emphasis on the word right. But LaDonna's expression and tone contained nothing akin to gloating, which made her the more intimidating. Unlike a less secure person, she didn't care whether you thought her clever or witty or not, and she certainly didn't care whether you liked her or not. She had nothing to prove. She had it all. In the moment before she spoke again, her lips were stretched into a smile, but it didn't feel warm to Charmaine. Jacket and stockings notwithstanding, she shivered. So, cut to LA. Your last job was at Fletcher and Zavala. They're our biggest competition. You're aware of that, I presume? Charmaine nodded, wishing the interview would end then and there, work permit or no work permit. I was hired at the USC job fair, she mumbled, hoping the fact that she hadn't gone looking for the job would make it acceptable in LaDonna's eyes. Good for you. It was said without inflection, neither the first nor the last word stressed, and was consequently not mistaken for a compliment. They rarely do job fairs, you know. As I'm sure you know, I'm sorry. How did you like working there? Working at Fletcher and Zavala helped me gain some invaluable experience in entertainment PR. That was the answer to a different question. What did you learn? Not the one that had been asked. How did you like? And a barely detectable intake of breath across the desk indicated that the interviewer had detected this. But the chauffeur had advised the interviewee not to let a faux pas make her stumble, so she kept moving. I was lucky to be part of one of the company's best teams. We handled theatrical new releases and some very prestigious Ultimate Collector's editions, so I got to learn a lot about how publicity campaigns in the industry work. Would you have quit if you hadn't been laid off? Was this the trick question every interview is supposed to have? And if there was a right answer, what was it? For 10 long seconds, Charmaine said nothing, thrashing about in the turbid waters of her mind for the right answer. Well, if the economy hadn't tanked, the bronze head across the desk tilted ever so slightly, and the job had lost its challenge, an acrylic nail tapped the desk ever so lightly, I would have looked for something else. Something that would allow me to use my skills and experience productively and help me acquire new ones. 3 questions followed. One she handled as well as a shortlisted candidate should, one almost as well, and on one she fumbled, unable to shake off the tension that had been gnawing away at her confidence since the moment she'd taken her seat. And it didn't help that Miss Robinson, framed against the backdrop of Laurel Canyon in her leather throne, had been observing her with the same smile flickering on her flawlessly made-up face. It was the kind of smile Charmaine loathed, the kind that wasn't even a smile, merely a stretching of lips. She'd seen it all the time in the airlines. There was a reason it was originally known as the Pan Am smile, but only in flight. The bitchiest, most shrewish girl knew that she must stretch lips while passing another crew member in the aisle. Thank you, Anjali. It didn't matter if the other girl had just stolen your boyfriend. If you'd just stolen hers, it would be a genuine smile, of course. Or if you couldn't stand her looks, if she had the gall to be prettier, then it was a dagger cloaked in lipstick the color of blood. Or if there was any other reason, including the urge to stab those butt-pinching, compliment-requesting, cabin-polluting, toilet-mucking, earful-giving passengers, while the stretching of lips should not be a smile. One of the many airline protocols that had been drilled into you during training was smile or off with your headscarf. In less ambiguous terms, follow protocol or you're fired. So you stretched your lips as you paced the aisles. Once you were on the crew bus to the hotel, you could drop the act and return to your bitchy, shrewish self. And heaven help the receptionist if she gave you the wrong room key. Charmaine kept her distance from such girls during layovers. She'd rather see the Pieta alone, and she'd learned to pay them back in their coin when such payment was due. But she still had to stretch lips at them in flight. The smile on LaDonna's face took her back 4 years, to the aisle of a 747, where blood-colored lips were being stretched at her on her final flight. How naive to think she was seeing it for the last time. Thank you.
How long did it take you to write that?
Just this bit that I read?
No, the book. How long did it take?
The book, I started in June 2010 when I had contacted Kiel University's creative writing program. I hadn't been accepted then, but I was in touch with the course director, and I felt there's a good chance of my getting into the program. And so I said, well, I better not show up with the same old story that I had submitted as part of my essay. Or, yes, I'd already submitted it, and that the tutor was going to read and decide whether they'd offer me a place. So I still remember it was June 1st, and I had this story knocking about at the back of my head. I had gone for the Iowa Summer Writing Festival in 2006, and I'd had this one sentence of one story. It was just one paragraph. And so I said, you know what, I better start. So I just started writing that story, and then I prepared, went to England, and I came to England with that one story. And I didn't know what I was going to write in England. But the day that the next day after I reached England, that was September, 3 months later, I realized I was going to have to meet my course director, and he was going to ask me, what are you working while you're here during the Masters in Creative Writing? And it just in a flash, it just hit me, Indian women living in Los Angeles. And the story I'm referring to actually is Crocodile Tears. I'll just read just that one couple sentences that had been knocking about at the back of my head. Look at it this way, said Vinitha, wiping her eyes on her sleeve and trying to act as though the onion she was slicing had caused her tears. Few people get to choose where they will die. So that was just the fully formed sentence that had come somewhere in Iowa so many years ago. And that's when October I started writing, and when my course ended, I had finished the first or second or third draft. So I think I finished the first draft July. So I think it took me about a year, 13 months, 14 months actually, to write the first draft. And then another 100 months to edit it. I was editing to 2 hours before I submitted. So 3 years in all.
So when you started, you weren't really thinking of a collection of stories?
No, I was just desperate to not show up without something new.
Were you interviewing a lot of people too?
For this?
Or is it all different?
No.
Or it's all autobiographical?
No, it isn't autobiographical. It's all fictional, actually. Yeah, I've realized that when someone says all literature is autobiographical, indeed it is in that sense, because it all comes from somewhere within you. But it's not in that these things actually happened to me, or that I know anyone. In fact, I deliberately told my friends, my very close friends, don't expect to find yourself there, and don't even expect to find your names there or whatever. So, but there is a story actually. Since I haven't had children, there is a story where a woman is pregnant. It covers the whole course of her pregnancy, and not knowing anything about the experience, I needed to have, make it authentic. So I did just call her from England and say, what were your feelings like and all that. And of course, to get the details right, I did ask a doctor friend some technical matters like what is that release form, the discharge form. He says it's not a discharge form, it's a discharge summary. So I got that right. So no Indian doctor can criticize me for that. And there are many Indian doctors.
What effect do you think your master's program had on your writing?
I think the stakes had to be high, because I have to admit, there was the thing of the grade. I did want to make the grade. But that was only secondary. I think it was having the tutor. And I couldn't have had that tutor had I just been doing a recreational creative writing course. Because that person, Joe Stretch, was in the Kiel Master's program. England has some incredible tutors, but they all they all tutor graduate students. So that's why I had to do the Masters. And yes, I did want to do well, and I had that, standard to reach and to hold myself.
Is this your first book?
This is my first book.